Hello and welcome to Bridging Talks. In this episode we have Joseph Allen, and he owns a digital consultancy or design agency called Evergarden Green. He will tell you more about what he does and we'll start the questions. So just want to say welcome, Joseph. How you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. Again, as you said, I sort of run this like one person digital agency, so my days of work are pretty flexible, and like you, I've been recording stuff today and I've really messed that up today. So I'm happy to be doing something that you're organizing instead of me, basically.
All right, well, yeah, good to have you here. And yeah, what we do always is just we will just start off by a quick introduction and you can say whatever you like. So we just want to get to know you. So yeah, please tell us whatever you like, however you want to say to summarize your background.
Sure, okay. So I guess, so for me, I grew up in Singapore, but went to a British school over there. So my sort of education was very focused around like computer science and maths. And I've always found that this weird bouncing between like England and for me Singapore to start with, and also at the same time bouncing from like this very analytical computer science world over to this like very human world of business that we're sort of both working in, right? And whenever I found one boring, I would always sort of find fun and solace in the other one, and that continued. So I came back to England for university, did computer science and maths at university. And started my career as a front-end developer. Then I moved over to the worlds of data. That just seemed so interesting, and it really made sense with that maths background as well. I didn't just want to make websites. I wanted to make websites that use data in interesting ways or tell interesting data stories. And I was kind of lucky because just as I graduated was when that world of data science and AI and machine learning really started to take off. And then I found it again, the more I focused on AI and machine learning, the more I would kind of miss the front end work. So I kept finding like these roles that felt so perfect, but then I needed something that like bridged the gap between them. And eventually I tried to move on to another data science role and just found a perfect front end role. And so I had always had this question in my mind of like, I feel like I'm supposed to do one thing and like everyone is telling me to do one thing, but I feel like I've got two or three things that I really enjoy. And I also really value the ability to like bounce between them and be appreciated when I do so. And so when I worked at this company, the CTO of that company was just exiting. Right. It was his first exit. And he said, I've got another idea that I've been working on for like 2 years in the back of my mind, and I need a technical person to come with me and do it. So from that front end role, I then got recruited for my data science skills again. And I had this choice of like, do I want this stable front end job or do I want something that's going to be really weird and really different? The salaries were the same, so there was no like financial motive to pick one or the other. So I was like, I'm going to go with this startup one. It just felt like such an obvious choice, even though it was way riskier. Got flown to Florida the next week to meet our first clients. Nice. And it felt like that, while I felt like I'd been punished for like jumping from web to data over and over again, it felt like it was beginning to be recognized. And then from that, it was just so flexible, and it just became, consulting just made a lot of sense after that. It was like, I can take a web role, I can take a data role. Everyone I work with seems to value all those differing experiences, and then that just leads so nicely into this love for Singapore that I had growing up. I was like, I want to experience that. I want to, while I bounce between these two different careers, I was like, I kind of want to bounce between these two different places, and skip the British 4 p.m. sunset and go somewhere with air conditioning and cheaper food and nicer food sometimes as well. So it's that sort of bouncing around, but then also trying to like provide stability to clients at the same time is such a weird question that really culminated with coronavirus, right? Where before, if I said, I can't come into the office, that was like it was like a mark against you, especially if you're consulting, right? It's like, I'm charging all this money, but I don't want to come into the office isn't really an offer you can make. But as soon as coronavirus started, it felt like that was instantly solved. and just before coronavirus, I had a working holiday visa to move over to Japan. So I was trying to figure out like how, the legality of that, the accounting of that side. And luckily Japan is really generous on like that first year of how taxes work and how you're allowed to work. So it felt like, I don't know, everything was kind of culminating. The digital nomad visas are coming in, and everything just feels like it's getting really easy for somebody that works like me. So I continued that again for another year in Taiwan, and I just got back from that 6 months ago, back to England again, to get married, and immediately we're back and we're just asking like, what's next? If we just stay in England, I've got clients now that are in like America, Singapore, London, all at the same time. So England kind of makes sense to just be in between all those different teams and stuff. But then at the same time, I don't know, it feels like too simple at the same time. So I'm looking at ways to get back over to Asia in general, to some of these places I've really enjoyed. And then when I weigh them up logically, it just feels like Japan just sort of jumps out as like kind of a nice middle between Singapore and Taiwan to me. I think Singapore is a bit too on rails, a bit too squeaky clean, and definitely the most expensive, right? Whereas Taiwan has a bit of that roughness still, but the food is incredible. The prices for what you get are really cheap. And so I look at all three of those and I'm like, I feel so much pull back there compared to England, but then we have the salaries in England are pretty exceptional. So, and then I have all these clients already. So at the moment, I'm just trying to answer like, what is, how do I make all of that work in a way that works for me, a way that works for my clients? I think the time zone in Japan is great as well, because then working in England and America kind of just stacks over into like the evenings in Japan. So it feels like a good way to really, really enjoy life basically in the short term. So that's my goal at the moment.
Yeah, that's quite cool, what got me interested about you is that we've got something similar, as in like I've been in Japan and so on, doing something in that space. And so just to let the audience know is that we met online, so met over LinkedIn and so on. I thought Joseph's got a cool story for us, and here he is. So that's it. So Joseph, what got you into Japan then? So please tell us about that, because I'm always interested here. I'm a fan of Japan myself, so
Yeah, it's a funny one. I asked that, you ask so many people that question, and they normally just say like Studio Ghibli movie or some particular movie, right? It's quite weird because I wouldn't describe myself as like an anime obsessed person or anything. I think we were born around the same time, right? And I think we both know that like Pokemon was very formative, probably when you were first going to school, right? I know for me that was on at like 8 a.m. just before we headed to school, so it was always like trying to watch as much of that as possible. But then because I lived in Singapore, I didn't have that like that disconnect from like British to Japanese content. Like we didn't have Kensuke's Castle and stuff like that out there. We couldn't even watch the BBC when I first got to Singapore. So I didn't have that exposure to Japan in the same way. But Singapore has a lot of Japanese stuff, and it was so weird because we used to always go on holiday and like we would just use Japan as like a stop-off point on the holiday. It was never like a goal. My family never traveled there or anything like that. And it was only once I had that first front-end developer job where I was beginning to get like a little bit too much money for like rent and bills, and I was thinking like, I have like 10 days holiday, I could go anywhere in the world, where do I want to go? And for some reason it was just the answer was Tokyo. I don't know why. It just felt like it was like I had the time to do it, I had the money, and I'd never been there properly, so I just felt like I need to go back to it, I guess. So I went the first time for like 4 days, all the way from England. And I was so jet lagged for the first 2 days, like waking up at 3 a.m. But because it was Tokyo, waking up at 3 a.m. didn't hurt me. I could go out for breakfast. I could go walk through Yoyogi Park. Like we walked and arrived at Harajuku at like 8 a.m. in the morning, just as everything was opening up. So like my first memories of like walking through Tokyo were like empty streets, but like businesses still open, all the touristy stuff was still there, right? Like the nice parks, the nice temples, they weren't closed. So I just, instead of having this sense of like, it's really busy, it was really expensive, I just had these like beautiful morning walks. And I remember walking through Yogi Park and just thinking like, I was there when like the salarymen were like walking through it to get to work. And I was just like, in Manchester, my walk to work is like on the edge of like an 8-lane road, and half the time it's raining. And it's such like a consistent thought for me. It's like, oh, the sun hasn't risen yet. I'm cold, I'm wet, just to get to the office that now we don't even need to go to anymore, right? And I was just, I don't know, it was slightly like, obviously it's romanticized now, but you know, I just had this sense like, I wish I could spend more time here. But from my time in Singapore, I've seen all these people struggle with like work visas and getting permanent residence. So I always felt like, you know, why would I put myself through that? Why would I go to a culture where I have to work harder? And so it always became this thing. It was like 4 days wasn't enough. That was ridiculous. Next time I'm going to go back and do it properly and see Osaka and Kyoto and the cherry blossoms, which is just like the second stereotypical holiday to Japan, right? And I was like, 2 weeks will be so much time. I'll just go and that'll do it. And then that wasn't enough time either. And then so the next time I went for a year, again thinking I'll get it out of my system. I don't need to work there. I'll just, you know, I'll keep working in England and I'll just enjoy my time out there. And then after going for a year, me and my partner's answer has just been, well, let's just go for 5 years. Let's go for 10 years. Like, let's try and figure it out. So yeah, every time I've gone like, let's get this out of my system, it's just come back, but it's not been through any, there's no like media that made me do it, or it just generally felt like, to me, like everything just felt a bit nicer. Things were clean in the way they were in Singapore. Systems worked, like infrastructure worked, trains were on time. Buying a ticket in a language I didn't understand was easy. I just found it like, if this is what it's like when I'm not accustomed to it, when I don't speak the language, what's it going to be like if I do speak the language, or if I can actually embed myself in a local culture? And I found like anytime I stayed somewhere for more than a few months, like I was in the community immediately. Like I was getting invited to like events at the community center. Some people would want to talk to me just because I know how to speak English. And it just felt like there were all these lovely advantages that became like really like intimate social experiences, like making dinner for somebody else. We made like bangers and mash for a Japanese family. And we made them rice pudding. And as Japanese as it was, you know, they were very kind and very thankful, but they definitely thought rice pudding was disgusting. And it was it was really funny to see the limits of that politeness, and you know how I don't know, it just felt very homely and welcoming. And I know that it's not all like that in Japan. You know, I had some bad experiences, but I have bad experiences in England as well. And I just, when I weigh them up, I just see a life with aircon, with infrastructure. The salary's a little worse, but it seems like what I get for the money I would make there is more than worth it, basically.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, that's you know, always good to hear from someone from UK sharing experience to go to Japan. And that's great. You know, and like you said, like one of the obviously the better things compared to Japan and UK is again the salary, but then again it's a matter of what place makes you happy as well. So that's work. And that's good to know then. So just want to ask you, how many times have you been there then? It's been so you've been there once, or? I think
only 4 or 5 times, but you know, most of them are just a couple of weeks at a time. It's not being very consistent. Like once I decided I wanted to live there, coronavirus started. So you know, 2 or 3 years of the time I wanted to live there, I haven't been allowed to go there. So it's been consistent since like 2019, so like 6 years now. But again, because me and my partner were under 30, the working holiday visa just seemed like such a perfect way to like try out all these different countries and figure out, you know, like just because I'm in England doesn't mean I need to stay in England and have a career in England, right? So I was like, you know, I would love to jump over to America and try it out. And it just felt like the working holiday visa was a really kind way to try out different countries and see if I actually gel with the culture. So our plan before COVID was to go to Japan, Australia, Canada, and Korea. And we only managed to get Japan and Taiwan in. And, Taiwan was just like a total gamble as well. We'd literally never been to Taiwan. We went to Korea for 2 weeks, and then we had a transit flight through Taiwan airport, Taoyuan, on the way back. And in the airport, we felt like we were back in Singapore. It gave us this really weird homeliness, that like nostalgia for like the early 2000s. I don't know why, but I just had, it just reminded me of when I moved to Singapore, and we never even left the airport, went back to England, and then moved to Taiwan like 6 months later. And it's a nice non-committal, like 1 year is enough to like enjoy it, make loads of friends that we're definitely going to go see for life. And that doubles down on Japan as well, right? Like if we're out there, we're a 2 or 3 hour flight to Taiwan. It gave me the sense that like, if we keep doing these working holiday visas, we end up really invested in these cultures. But if we live in England, we're only going to spend like 2 weeks in Japan every 2 years, maybe 2 weeks in Taiwan every 2 years. Whereas if I was out there, these places are like weekend trips. Like going to Singapore for like a long weekend is a lot more viable from Japan, a lot cheaper. So I don't know, it all started like connecting and making sense while we were out there. And I love the food as well. So it's just being somewhere where I can go out with like 10 quid and actually get like a feast is beautiful to me. And I feel like every year I was in Japan or Taiwan, I felt like I was going to live longer. Whereas in England, I feel like I'm shrinking. I'm losing my vitamin D supplements, and I'm eating too many pies and fried foods and stuff. So yeah, it makes sense to me basically.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear that. It's it's good to hear that place makes you happy, and that's the thing. Like using that working holiday visa would make the most out of it. Like once you're there, and it's the same story with me, where I've been going there and just always wanting to stay there long term, but then coming back, staying there for a few months and just coming back. But it's good that you're taking that kind of chance to go there and okay, so yeah, that's great. So what we're gonna just talk about now is just more about your like what you do and stuff. So I've read that you're a front-end developer for 8 years, and you've got this agency called Avocado Green. Yeah, let's just talk more about that. So what got you into like development stuff? I know you did a little summary in the start, but I would love to hear more about it.
Man, I guess I think in school I did the like A level in computer science, and there was a sense that when I did it, there was a sense that like computing wasn't really a real subject. We called them like hard subjects. At the time, ICT was still national. Like I'm showing my British here. But ICT, basically in our schools in England until very recently, we taught like Microsoft Word and Excel spreadsheets instead of how to program. And so until I was about 15 or 16 years old, I still had never programmed beyond, I can't say Roomba either, that's so British, beyond like some little one-off activities where, you would spend 1 hour of ICT learning to program, and then it would like get thrown away. And as I said, I'm very like maths driven. So I really liked doing little projects where it was just, here's a puzzle, solve the puzzle. By the way, if you knew how to program, solving this puzzle would totally make sense. And I had a friend called Sam who, it always felt like he was like one step ahead of me, like in the computer science world. And he would always come up to me and he would say like, hey, I've got this maths challenge where I'm going to give you this really long number and you have to figure out if it's a palindrome or something like that. And that became like a nightly thing where it was like, here's today's challenge. And he kept giving me these like little challenges. And then when we would, I would come in the next day and I'd be like, I tried it and it was like impossible. I don't even understand how you could do it. And he would give me like a little hint. And some of them I look back on and I know now, like the hint he gave me was also nonsense. Like we were just two students like trying to figure out how to do these like computer science patterns. And then again, on that computing course, we had to do a really big project. So I did like a solar system simulator where you could like add planets that would like spiral around each other. And it really brought like all the theoretical math stuff I was doing to life basically. So I really value the A level for that. And then in England, again, because the expectation is that no one was programming, when you go to university, the expectation is you've never programmed before. So you can apply for a computer science degree having never done any computer science or programming at all. So the first few months of the course were like upskilling all the people that have never done it. But for me, it was like the first 2 years, it felt like I'd done everything that was being taught to me. So I tried to find something where I was like, what can I do outside of this course that I feel like will give me a career beyond like this repetitive stuff I'm being taught? And there was no web development on my course beyond like the group projects. So that just felt like a really natural way to like play around with programming and also do something like quite visual. You know, like a lot of the code I was writing before would like, it would run for like an hour and just like print out a correct answer. And sometimes I like that, but I always wished it had like cool animations and cool loading. So being a front-end developer just made sense. And I think like even logically, the amount of front-end work is just huge. Like when I compare the data industry and the front-end industry, I think it was, if you started from scratch, I think you could have got a job in front-end in like 3 months. But I think for the data world, so many of them even now still expect like a PhD in data science or in AI. And there were so many roles I would apply for that said like PhD mandatory. And the first interview would be me trying to like unpack that requirement and go like, do you actually need an academic, or would you like someone with 6 months of software engineering experience and like a mathematical mind? So again, I got to that point where I was just sort of bouncing between them. And then the more I did it, it felt like consulting made a lot more sense. I could do these little one-off projects, like 6 weeks of front-end development to finish something. And then the gap I really fell into that I found, I'm still trying to figure out how to describe this job. And that's why I said at the start, like I'm a tech generalist because there is no title for like web and data specialist. But if I say software engineer, that feels a bit disingenuous as well. So I try and position now as like, if you just got funding for your startup and you're not a technical founder, your early questions are going to be like, how do I get a brand? Like, how do I get a website that just proves that I'm real? And at the same time, if I am building a technical product, the first thing I need to do is like hire a CTO, but I don't actually understand the technical skills to even interview a CTO, right? So it's like you're in this loop of like, I need to find a technical person to help me find a technical person and to help me like overcome this early hump. And that's what I did for my first client. And then pretty much every client since has been the same. It's been this sort of like advisory role where I sort of point things in the right direction, remind someone, you know, oh, you need these kind of people. The title you're looking for is like a, you know, user experience designer or something like that, and like point them in the right direction. And I end up getting a lot of clients where they don't want, you know, they want to hire a first developer. So the budget in England for that would be like, I guess around £30,000 now. And that's for someone who might have never programmed outside university before, right? With potentially no real world experience. And my offer is, you know, for like a third of that, I'll work 1 day a week for the whole year. I'm not gonna disappear at the end of that year. If you want to text, I have clients that text me that haven't paid me for anything in like 5 years that still say, you know, how do you set up this project? Can you give me like a run through? I sort of include that in the price, that you have my advice forever. You get me for meetings, but if you want me to like fix the website, make a website, if you want me to do like LinkedIn marketing, I can cover like all those things that for so many people are just too technical. Like even trying to post on LinkedIn every day is quite difficult. I like doing it, but I find the inspiration part really difficult. So I sort of do all those things for these early stage startups. And then if I have like 2 or 3 of them going at once, you know, I've just got like Slack open, I've got WhatsApp open. They're asking me questions all the time. Sometimes I'm doing actual like proper front end React work for them. But sometimes it's just like, oh, I can't remember the username and password for this thing, or where I put this design document. So it's just fell out. But then at the same time, for those startups, you know, I'm cheaper than a junior developer, but I like to think they're getting an extreme amount of value from that money. So it seems like a lot of them sort of start me on that process, and then I'm still working with them. One of my clients now, I'm still working with them 3 years later on like a 1 day a month contract. And if I went to like a job board, that job doesn't exist, right? There's no contracting website where you can be flexible and have all these strange arrangements. But that's where it becomes like every single client has been either a personal recommendation or just found me from like a LinkedIn comment or post. And I always, if you asked me like 10 years ago, like, would you post on LinkedIn about your work? I'd just be like, no way, that sounds like a huge waste of my time. But it does do something magical. I think it reminds people that you exist. So I have a lot of clients that will message me and say like, I've been meaning to talk to you for like 6 months. And every day I'm seeing like a post on LinkedIn or something you've done.
Yeah.
And they say like, every time they see me, they go like, oh, I have been meaning to talk to you. I'm not going to do it right now. And you just don't know how many times that's going to come in. And some of those contracts are worth like tens of thousands of pounds. And if I said like, write a comment on LinkedIn every day, write a post on LinkedIn every day, and you'll get £20,000 in business, like you would easily do that. So that's the bit I'm at now, where I'm just trying to figure out like, is there, I'd like to be doing outreach, and I can't figure out like how to structure that like weird, like, hey, I'm this guy that's very flexible. How do I find these companies that are like early stage startup that have enough funding where they can afford to hire somebody, but they can't figure out who it's just such like a small sliver of that market. And yeah, I'm finding that really interesting because I haven't figured out how to describe what I do in a way that would present well on LinkedIn or on an email or anything. So I really just end up like I talk to a lot of people for free, and then I normally find like in 6 months they come back and they go like, we wanted to get you as soon as we talked to you, but obviously we knew we couldn't pay you anything. And I'm normally just like, what you're asking is like 20 minutes of advice. Like, if you just ask me like, oh, what tool should I use to build a website? We don't have any developers. I would just say like Webflow. It'll cost you £300 to £500 a year. That's like cheaper than any day rate at an agency, right? So if you can figure out how to do that, or if you have a student that's doing marketing and they can do like Webflow tutorials for 3 or 4 hours, I think, there's some really creative options. And if my role was I'm a contractor, I want as much money as possible, I would never recommend those things. And I think that comes from like valuing that bouncing around again. It's like I would love to have like a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, different client, different startups. And every day I'm just like context switching and like helping them all progress at once. Yeah. That's like my ideal. It's really weird. And obviously that's like 5 magic clients, right, to find like exactly what I'm looking for. But I've never looked for it. It's always just found me. And so it's just really weird to me that it's kind of weird to me that it's working, because I'm not directly targeting it. But then now I have this feeling like if I start directly targeting it, would it go a lot better? Like now I'm actually putting some effort into like the marketing and sales side. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, just want to say, I think that's really interesting. I found that quite cool. You keep posting there, and those people, like you said, that reach out to you after a few months, it's the fact that you keep showing up like to the feeds.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. When everyone looks at the feeds, whether on LinkedIn, other social media, they see the same person posting some stuff. That's great. Yeah, so that's some great stuff there. So you started freelancing. When was this? So you've worked for a company, so you've got a total of like how many years of experience? Like when did you start actually thought, okay, you know what, I can get my own clients? When did you like start that? I
worked in a front-end team that was all like React heavy and stuff in when was that, 2016.
Okay.
And that was like a junior developer role for me, but I was surrounded by these guys that were like my boss was a lead developer at the age of 23, and I was like 20, so I was going like, wow, I can really like, if I dedicate to this, I would have thought like, oh, maybe in 25 years I'm allowed to be a lead developer. Like this guy was just going through it, and the whole team was like that. They were all just these die-hard front-end developers. They made it so fun. They like would prioritize me a lot as well. If I was like confused by something, one of them would like pick me up, take me somewhere else for like 4 hours and just like explain unit tests to me and like keep drilling me until I get it. And they were all in this moment where they were going like, if we all went contracting, we would probably make like triple what we're making right now. And they were all just like, yeah, I guess we would. And then like over the next 2 months, they all like dropped off. They were all like, they basically said like, let's all apply for contracts, see if we're good enough. And if any of us get offered roles, let's just quit and try it. So they all did that. So they would all like go away for 2 weeks, come back and be like, I just got offered £300 a day and I'm here working for like 30K a year. And so I thought I'll do the same thing. Like as soon as one client says to me, like, I'll pay you a day rate for what you're doing, I'll start a business and I'll just go hard on it. And so that's what happened. So I had one client that I just bumped into him in like a co-working space and he was just complaining. And I was like, well, I do front end development. I can probably give that a go. And he was like, what's your day rate? And I was like, £200. And he was like, that sounds great. Let's go. And like in my head, I was like, oh, just double my salary. I don't know. And so to me, that was like, when someone else values you for it, you kind of realize like, why am I doing it this way around when I could be working half as much for twice as much or something like that? So I sort of followed their pattern of like, if someone else values me like that, they're probably, if everyone else is doing that, then they're probably right. And I'm probably underestimating myself. So that's how I started the consulting. And then from there, it just spread. Like I would meet people that I'd met before like 5 years ago and told them that I was a web developer. And it would just always come back up again, like in some weird way. I'd get like a phone call or a Facebook message and someone would be like, do you still make websites, by the way? We've got this website we paid an agency for and we think it's not working or it's not worth the money. Can you like evaluate it? And just like weird pieces of work. Like it's never just make the website. It's always some like, we need technical advice from someone we trust. And then it just becomes making a website basically because they're like, well, this guy is pretty reliable and consistent, I guess. So it's still working. It's really weirded me out. And I started that in 2018. So at the time I started consulting, I probably only had like 2 or 3 years experience as like a full-time front-end developer. But I think there's a lot of value in just being able to speak technically about what you're doing and to be able to like distill that to non-technical audiences. And that's what they're at. They know that they need a website and they can't get past that. They're like Googling like make a website or web agencies. And so when the competition is agencies, you just have to be like cheaper and more reliable than an agency. There's always the worry, like every agency presents well over sales, right? But there's always the worry. It's like, okay, you've got 50 clients and 6 employees. So if I'm paying you £2,000 a month, how much time am I actually getting? And then the maths just says like, well, I could just hire like 2 full-time developers for our marketing website instead of paying this agency for the whole year. And so it just felt very logical. And I guess my pricing is just a continuation of that. It's like, I want this flexibility. I'll give you flexibility back. I'm cheaper than an agency. I'm cheaper than a junior hire, and I'm more available. So it feels like a good position, but scaling it, I've tried to scale it a few times, especially over COVID. There was like nothing else to do. So I was like, how much work do I need before I would hire another person? And then I'm quite frugal. So I was like, realistically, like I need to be working at like 150% capacity and then hire a junior and upskill them to like take on 75% so I can focus on getting more work for the next hire. But then that just leads you to a point where you're at like 100 to 150% energy for a prolonged period of time until you feel like you have stability. So I've never made it past like a team of 2 basically, because we reached the same point where like, yeah, we can work hard, we can do this. But then now there's 2 of us, we're trying to get enough work for 3 people. And it just seems like quite unending in that regard. So I really value this like this personal way that I am, but I'm also aware that my cap is like 7 days a week, right? I can't do more than that. So I don't know what happens if I ever get there. but then it's client work as well. So it's always, I think the availability is part of what makes me such a good choice, in that like I can actually start next week on Wednesday at any moment because I always have capacity for one or two more clients anyway. So yeah, it's just weird. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, appreciate that. It's nice to hear your background and about how you started, and it's it's interesting to know when you're at the co-working space and then you suddenly met someone, and that's the benefit of like being in an open space. Like imagine you were somewhere inside, so this way, you know, when you're outside you meet people and so on. So just want to ask just a follow-up question on that. So when you did start your freelance career and everything, what challenges did you face at the starting? So you, after getting that £200 day rate client from the co-working space, how did you get about to find more people after that?
Yeah, it was always, I guess, like the big worry at the start was, you know, you're saying no to like a full-time stable salary, right? So if you look at like entry-level salary, again, like 30K or whatever, then a frugal brain will then go like, okay, so if I'm not making like £2,000, £3,000 a month, I'm actually doing worse than I would have been if I just stayed at that job. So there's like this weird, like, there's really like a push to like hustle and grow. But then at the same time, the kind of clients I like don't respond to that. Like, hey, I need you to lock in for like 5 days a week for the next 6 weeks. It tends to be everything just like lands in my lap. So it was just, I think what really solved that was just that all of my clients start with like this flexibility. So I can kind of get them to like lock in quite comfortably to really long periods of time, but not in like a committal way, just in a way that it makes sense to them financially if they pay like £6,000 for access to me for a whole year, because then they know that all their job descriptions are written, all their website changes are sorted, and it's just very consistent and stable for them, I guess. And then even when I'm moving country and stuff, these people know that I'm not going to disappear, that they can still ask me questions. And then it just spreads from there, because a lot of them come back. Like with one startup, they'll have hired me like 6 years ago, and then 3 years later, they're at a new startup, they've exited again, and they want to do it again. So yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Like my advice to like solve that early stage problem is like, be consistent, be yourself, and be like flexible in the way you work. But I don't know if you can make that happen for yourself. Like I think the reason that works for me is just because that's the way I've always worked. So it's kind of made sense. But yeah, the money has been really weird. Like there are some years where it's been like incredible and I could never match it with like a full-time job. And then some, I've like survived COVID. I think one of the COVID years I made profit of like £600, and that was like a few years into doing this. So I was so happy that it was never negative for a year. Like when I got my accounts at the end, I was like, yes, I did it. But if I just worked in like any company, I would have done 3,000% that. But
yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing about like freelancing and starting a business in general. Like, it's basically like a farm. You need to put the seed in and grow the seed and so on. Once it grows, it gives you something. Yeah, it gives you the crops then after. So that's what it is. But okay, so just want to ask another follow-up question based on that. Let's say now, based on all this experience you have right now, you've dealt with many clients and so on. If you were to kind of go back to your like former self when you first started, like what advice kind of would you give to yourself like when you first start? Like it could be anything from the way you interact with people, maybe the learning, the way you learn things, the way you handle negotiation. So I would love to hear anything like that.
I think back then there was like when you start the career, you're on like this standard like product team where you've got like quality assurance person, a designer, a front-end developer, a back-end developer. And I think early career, there's always this pressure to like, you want to perform well as fast as possible. You want to feel like they're getting their money's worth so that you have like no risk of being fired, right? So I think that was a big incentive to pick up like easier pieces of work, especially in like software development. We like break things down into all these little pieces. And so there'll be like one really big piece of work and a senior will take it and they'll be like, why would we give this to a junior? Because it's going to take him probably like years to do what I can do in a couple of weeks or days. So I think instead of going like, oh, let's do as many like small, easy tickets as possible, I wish I sort of joined on to some of these senior devs with those complicated tickets, because you can end up in a cycle like that where you never learn how to deploy something to the real world. You just know how to make the website that runs locally. You never step outside your bounds, basically. And it was a lot of the good stuff that's happened for me has been when becoming like a data scientist briefly, is because I really liked working with the data team, and they needed some front end expertise and I wanted to do a little bit of data work. So like that exchange made sense. So I think it was, I guess it's kind of like, don't be nervous about that, like really enjoy it. And especially now, because I've basically been working like in isolation for the last 5 years, although I've had some clients that have had like 6 people dev teams, normally I'm like closer to the top in those teams. So I'm the one making these decisions, but instead of learning them from like an expert that's done it for 20 years, I'm learning it from like a YouTube video or a conversation with ChatGPT or a blog post. And I think, that full-time job is really like a period for like refinement and like forcing these really good patterns in you, that when you become a consultant, the first thing you do in a lot of these places is you start bringing in those tools that you were using in the big companies. And even if it's a 6 people dev team instead of a 300 people dev team, they still need to like track their code changes. They still need to find a way of breaking down pieces of work and distributing them across the team, and like proving that they've done work. That's a really big thing as well. I've had a lot of, when you're consulting and if the money's not totally locked in, if you can't prove that you've done something of substance, then you'll have clients that end up thinking you're doing nothing. And I've had very, very non-technical clients where I can't say like, we built the website and we built the back end. We had like a back end team of 3 people and a non-technical CEO who just couldn't understand why we had these 3 devs at like a really, really data heavy, big API, big databases system. And so every week, that was part of the challenge. It was like, how do we get this guy to just recognize that something's being done? This money isn't going nowhere. And instead of going like, oh, let's do 20% more work, instead it was like, let's do 10% less work, but make a nice presentation in like a non-technical way, a write-up every month that he sees where he can like check off stuff and he can change the priorities without really understanding what's going on. And again, like that wasn't taught at university, that wasn't taught at these big companies. That's just like managing stakeholders and like being a human, right? So I think it's a mix of all of those things that makes it work, I think.
Yeah. So thanks for that. Yeah, and it's interesting that you said that. Yeah, it's good to get some experience with the senior people, like those tickets that you said. So it's good to understand everything as well. And that's something also happens with some senior people in a startup where they don't understand stuff. You gotta tell them. So that's great stuff. Now what we're just gonna do is just talk more about like, as a front-end developer, and now AI is coming to place in the job market. It's kind of getting difficult to obviously find a job, but what's your take on the freelancing as a front-end developer, and how is it evolving basically? So just your opinions on that would be great.
I mean, I would say like a large portion of the work I do is like making a first-time marketing website, first-time branding, or just even like giving these small companies like the vocabulary to like search for what they need, what kind of agency they need, what kind of freelancer they need. And it does feel like most proactive people could figure that out themselves with Google, and now with ChatGPT, it should be even easier.
Yeah.
And now we're getting these specialized AIs like Lovable, AIs LLM, sorry, Lovable and VO, where you can describe like a first-time prototype for a React app or for a marketing site, and it does make stuff that is better than stuff I can make in a lot quicker time, right? So it's more robust. It does like, it'll put all the social media icons in a footer where I might not even think about that yet. I might still be busy at the top of the website. And so, naively, I think I could be scared about it, but I also think so much of what I do is like human and outside of actual technical roles. So I would feel, if I was 20 now instead of 30 and I was just getting started, I would be quite scared because I think that there's a lot of disincentive now to hire a junior and actually invest in them and upskill them. I read that like at some major universities, computer science graduates have like 6% unemployment by the end of the year. And 10 years ago, I think we all would have said like that's the safest job and that's the place to be. And I think in particular front end development, just because so much of it is this like marketing side of it can be a bit easier and can be automated a lot more nicely, and there is just a huge training set for like marketing sites. And if you look at like templates for websites, like agency templates on Webflow, for example, there's probably hundreds of them, and those are the people that think it's worthwhile, and they're selling those templates for like £90, and that was before AI. So I just, it just shows it was already like quite undervalued to begin with. I think it's quite low paid in the UK in terms of software engineering roles, unless you can get into that product space where you're like building a really refined React app or something similar, like something very technical where you just maintain that single project. So it's quite freaky to look at it. I feel all right about it, and I think it's a good incentive to go somewhere like Japan where they'll be excited, they'll be like hyped for these AI tools, but I do get a sense that from what I see, people aren't really automating teams, they're not automating developers. Most people have like a huge backlog of work, and while they're getting through it quicker, most people aren't running out of work. At least on the projects I work on, like if we could go 10 times faster, I think we would just have 11 times the number of tickets and the amount of work that we would have to do. I'm seeing a lot of teams that are they're not getting shrunk, but when someone leaves, they're not getting replaced. And so, it seems like the pool of opportunities is just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. But at the same time, that could be, I do see a world where some of these AI tools are like eroding quality of code in places. And while we're at these like run fast bits now, there probably will be an impact in the short term anyway, where some of those issues could easily be fixed by seniors, but are being like iterated on by juniors or seniors that are reliant on AI tools. And I think there'll be some pushback in a weird way, but yeah, it's weird. I almost feel like I'm at the point where I wouldn't recommend someone becomes a programmer, and I'm not sure if that's like completely disingenuous and terrible advice, or if that is like, I see some scary things in the junior market for it basically, and I wonder how long that'll take to bubble out to the freelance stuff too.
Yeah, it is interesting about what's happening, and what I take away from what you're saying, and what I also believe in, is that what can differentiate you is basically your character and how you do it. So let's say someone starts a freelancing, and you mentioned something about your like how you present yourself or something, so that human element would be in place.
Yeah, that might be all we have left.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
As well.
Yeah,
we've got like my job is basically like targeting early founders that have funding, which you'd think in business terms, I'm probably targeting the most proactive people there are in businesses, right? Like people that are willing to like change the way they work and disrupt. And I think those people are going to see AI tools and they'll go like, well, before I give this guy £500 to make a website, maybe I can make it myself, or maybe I can use this paid tool and pay £25 a month for access to just make my own stuff. And we're going to be reliant on people that they know their lane and they don't want to step out of it. And they'll say like, look, I have a strategy in mind and I want to do that, but I don't want to touch marketing. And my opportunity there is going like, well, I enjoy the marketing side and I enjoy the technical side. So you focus on that and I'm going to free you up over here. But yeah, there is a worry that like, if these AI agents start adding like a web developer role, and we're seeing that now already, right? With those chat GPTs or personas or whatever they're called. Yeah. And I think we're pretty close to those just, being your marketing team and working. But yeah, it's really interesting. But I think there'll always be holdouts. There's still people that don't like share code within teams. There's still businesses that run on Perl. I think we'll see them just, if anything, slowly die out. I'm not expecting a big collapse in the more senior roles until there's a big collapse in the junior roles, and then you don't need managers, arguably. I mean, I can only speculate on it, but I think we're probably all right for a few years, and whether something catastrophic comes from it or not, I don't think it changes the way I work. Like, if you knew all jobs would be automated in 5 years, what are you going to do? Like, make as much money now as possible? It's like, is that different to what you're doing anyway? You know, we're all, it doesn't really change my strategy, basically, depending on the outcome. So I feel like I'm already in the human bit anyway, hopefully.
Yeah, what I take away from that, it's any type of like presentation, sales skills would be the strongest point right now when it comes to presenting, because at the end of the day, sometimes you see people, they work with people, the skills might not be great, but they just have a great character with them, like the way they talk and stuff. And based on your earlier conversation about you posting stuff on LinkedIn, building a relationship, so that's something I think very important to do, like building relationships. Then people just some people could just use AI, but at the end of the day, if they trust someone and they have someone who can do a good job, I'm sure they want to just let them deal with it.
Yeah, so I think that collapses at some point, right? Like if my funnel, like if my cold outreach was all AI generated,
right?
At some point we jump on a call, right? Like we talked a little bit, we jump on a call.
Yeah.
Maybe even in the future, maybe this version you're talking to now, maybe that's AI as well. Like it's just a video scan of myself that's been trained on me well. But then what happens when we like go out for lunch? You know, we have like a business lunch or get coffee. Like as long as those things still exist and those things still impact, like the closing of a sale, like sure, the outreach is going to speed up, but we're already seeing, like, you can look at like applying for a job in Japan as a beautiful example of like, you know, the recruiter, like the recruitment process, you have candidates, you have a business, there's one role. And in the world before remote work, that role is only available to like maybe like 100 developers in a city, like a small city or a small town. And of them, 90 probably don't want to change their jobs. So there's only 10 of them that would really fit that role. And so you don't have this like choice paralysis. Maybe one of them is a clear, obvious choice. Whereas now you add remote work to that, and then you think you're preaching about like, we have this great perk, we don't go in the office, it's all remote. Now you can get applicants from everywhere in the world. And then you add on to that they're probably using some sort of AI tool or some sort of automation to like mass apply to many roles at once. And then now for the company on the other side, they're like, I just got 500 applications for this job that is in this little town in Japan that probably should have got 5 to 6 if we did it 2 years ago. And so their response to that is they have to add some AI tool. They need something that like processes it. And instead of, you know, whoever gets the job in the end is going to win because they're human, right? They're going to win in the interviews. They're going to win from their personality. But if more of those volumes increase and AI tools increase and automations and automated testing of those people increase, that won't come through in the early stages. And then it just means your early stage becomes like a first stage before another human stage. And so you just end up adding like all these filtering layers to try and get down to like a real person, but the early filters don't act like a person yet. So you have a high chance of missing out on the people that would actually have these people skills, basically.
Yeah, so thanks for that. Yeah, that's something to think about there. And we can just hope for the best whatever happens, and like build up like our presentation skills and like putting our name out there.
Best or worst, you act the same, right? Whether you're optimistic or not, you're gonna do the same thing. You probably still want a job, you probably still want a house, you probably still want to do all those things.
So thanks for that. We're just going to touch upon now is just basically like what framework like do you use, and in today's like in today's time, like this year and so on. I mean, what's the popular frameworks? So like for example,
software frameworks? Or?
Yes. For like, let's say app development, for example. So is React the most popular one, or based on Yep.
you tend to get in software where there's like, if something has like a popular majority, then it means that there's solutions for that space, right? So if I have an issue with like a React website I'm building, I know that probably 1,000 other people have had it. Whereas if there's a new tool, while that new tool might be cooler, there's no one's invested in it yet. So it needs like a big shift over. So I started using React like 7 or 8 years ago. And then after the first project, it just became like, if I'm making a website myself, I'll probably just use React. And then the more experience you get with it, the more it feeds into it. And then suddenly roles start listing like for React specifically, or they want 3 years React experience. So then when I move over to like app development, I go like, well, what's good for someone who uses React? And they have React Native, which is the same, but has a lot of native components for like how, Google, Android and iPhones like use buttons and stuff like that. So the jump seems kind of logical between those. But then when I come to something else, something entirely new, like databases or something like that, then I just have to go with like what comes up on Google or what my friends recommend. It is actually all just personal recommendations. Like,
right.
I want a trusted decision from an expert. So if I'm not the expert, I'll try and find another one. And whether that might be someone on YouTube, but normally, I've worked with enough people now where I just have loads of WhatsApp numbers and we'll all like share developer problems. And, most front end problems have been solved by one of your friends already, whatever it is, like localizing a website into other languages. There's a very rigorous solution to it. And then there's like a really janky solution that I might implement if I don't Google it or don't ask my friends. But stuff is so established now, even though it's turbulent and like always changing, there's just always like a package that does almost exactly what you want.
Okay, yeah. So you're currently using React and you've got experience in like React Native. Yeah. So thanks for that. And based on the startups now, like since you target early stage founders who have got funding and so on, when it comes to, like you said, sometimes when they can see a good opportunity, like let's say if they meet someone like you, can offer them good value in terms of building a website, but some startups, even though they have funding, they become frugal and they want to just do it themselves. What mistakes do you think startups like that are doing? What is costing them in the long run?
Yeah.
And I think any advice on that? So any advice to those startups?
Yeah. The big one I see a lot is just the like an overcommitting to like costs basically. So if they'll if someone's got like their first 100K in funding,
right,
then they'll pay for some sort of service like a marketing and PR service that maybe costs like £5,000 a month. And they'll be like, if you do the maths there, they've just locked in a 60K a year bill and the only money they have is at 100K. And they're thinking, oh well, I'll get funding by the end of the year, no question asked, so I can keep that going forever. But you never know when there's, a lot of my clients are in like the crypto Web3 space. So you never know when there's going to be this like bullish confidence and people want to invest in these things, or these like 6-month lulls where no one wants to touch anything that's like financial or fintech in any way. And so those committals can just be like a real death rattle. Like you actually have a time where you can run out of money now as soon as you sign on to one of those. And I find you can, you want ones where you can like scale up and scale down as funding is obviously coming or if times are going to be difficult. So I find, it's quite a weird one because obviously like employees fall into that category as well. Like as soon as you get one employee, you're on the hook for it. You can't mess them around. You can't wait on an invoice for a month or something. So I always advise people to like be more flexible at the start. Like if you don't have a brand yet, for example, you can go to an agency and there'll be like a brand kickstart package that's like £6,000 and it'll get you like a couple of days time, a couple of workshops and stuff, and it's very structured. But if you go freelance, like somewhere out there's like a graphic design student that's just graduated that was like top of their class. They've got like this incredible portfolio. And you can probably get a logo out of them for £50. And you can probably, if you give that person £500, they'll do everything. They'll do like the social media package, all the banners for your LinkedIn, like they'll do highlights of all, like the profiles of all your staff. And I just think that, if you're going to be like this scrappy startup and then you get some money, you've still got to be a scrappy startup, and if the branding isn't good enough, you can come back, you can do it again. You can still spend that £6,000 if you don't like it, and you've only paid an extra 500. But if you like locked in with like a digital agency and you're paying like 60K a year, you've overpaid, because at some point there's no work. Like at some point they've finished the website, they've made the logo, they've done all this stuff, and then they're pushing to do marketing for you. But a lot of companies, they want marketing consistently done. They want posts consistently. They don't want to look like they had a marketing boom and then they took a break for 2 months, and they don't want an investor to like look them up and see that they haven't posted anything for 7 months. But that doesn't need like a full-time person. That doesn't need like a full-time agency. That could be like a freelance content writer in your particular space. And there's all sorts of other avenues to that now. If you really want, you can like ChatGPT generate content. You can hire an intern. Like there's just so many more like creative and scrappy ways to make that £100,000 actually last you a year and a half, instead of just having an agency that you think you need.
Yeah, that's some excellent advice out there. So basically, startups, when they receive funding, instead of actually getting the goals that they promise the investor that they will, use that money to make the product, so on, they sometimes want to act like a big company. They'll go and get a big office space, use that money, hire, like you said, the £60,000 marketing expert, so on. But if they can just see people who can actually value them, and of course, like the student example that you mentioned, the intern and so on, give them a little bit of money, that can bring them big difference, and they can save that money as well. And it's not just all about like burning that cash. So that's something nice. And I'm sure like in your freelance career, you've probably pointed that out, like, hey, look, based on that, this is what I think it's an excellent thing to point out. Tell them, hey, look, you got this much funding, you're gonna pay this much, and comparing yourself out there. So it's great. I like that. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is just talk more about your any cross-cultural projects have you done. So most of your clients, you mentioned that you've got clients in US and so on, in other countries. So have you worked with people in East Asia? Like when you were based in Taiwan, did you work with people in Taiwan?
Yeah, a little bit. It was like Taiwan has a really big like Web3 scene. So I actually we got one of my clients got accepted onto like a tech accelerator, and one of the other people in my cohort was in Taiwan as well. So I could actually go meet them in Taipei. And that was pretty crazy, like meeting other founders, where some of them couldn't even speak English, but they were like so happy to like meet someone else that thought Taiwan was like a good place to do business, basically. And I have a client in Singapore as well at the moment, and that's we talk a lot because Singapore is a really strange place, especially on LinkedIn. Like the kind of stuff people talk about and post on LinkedIn, I'll like argue with her because she's like sales and marketing, and then I do like the website of that. So she'll give me an idea, and I would be like, if I saw that in England, I would be so confused. It would be like one of the weirdest things I've seen posted on like British social media. And she'll just say like, I see that style of post, I see that every day, like every single day. And it's really weird because, I grew up there, but I didn't experience any of the business side of there. So even though it's sort of my culture, I have this like complete disconnect to it as well. And then especially like now, Japan is just so famously like starkly different to other parts of the world that it comes out in these really weird ways. Like now, if I position myself as this like tech generalist, it's like a huge bonus in England. I keep talking to people and they'll be like honest with me, and they'll be like, look, if we bring you in and we want you to do the website, and you're saying like, but I also want to do some of the marketing, some of those people see that as a disadvantage. They think like, this guy's going to be flighty, and if we give him just a front end job, he'll get bored because there's no marketing for him to do. When the reality is, I like variety, but I can find the variety anywhere. But it's just funny that like what I thought is like such an obvious advantage can be so culturally different in another place, which I admit I don't understand it yet, and I'm working on it, and I'm figuring that out by talking to people like you and talking to people in Japan. And I think a benefit is, most people working out there that aren't Japanese, they've all experienced this exact arc, right? Where they all know, like, oh yeah, I used to do that. I used to position myself like that, and I changed it. And sometimes I change them a little bit. Sometimes they change me a little bit. But I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think, there's nothing better than figuring out how to work with other people and learning languages and trying to like bridge these barriers that they might be trivially bridged by AI in a couple of years. What's the point of learning Japanese if in 2 years we have like a special earplug that translates stuff for us? But I think it's a really beautiful hobby to have and a way to branch out and connect these different things.
Yeah, it's interesting there. So since you've worked in Singapore, like you have clients in Singapore, and you've been, living in Taiwan, US, you've got clients there. What expectations in terms of work expectations did you experience like that were different from each other, like from Western companies, Eastern companies? So if you have anything to share, that would be great.
I get a big thing I have noticed is that generally the developers in Asia, and I include like Russia in
Right.
Asian working, is like
Yeah.
they will just work any hour, and it's quite weird. Like, I don't know if it's just because they're ahead of like the UK time zone that they know that their night times have to be more available to meetings. So I have a lot of meetings where I get a lot of email replies and stuff that will be at like 9 p.m. on a Friday. And in England, I just think that would be like unheard of to respond to clients like that. But I don't know if that's a global positioning thing, because again, as I say, like the Russian developers I've worked with have been exactly like that. Like they understand that flexibility is needed when you're working with international teams. I'm not sure I've seen it the other way around. The more I think about it, my English clients tend to be so 9 to 5, but
Okay.
I don't know if that's like cultural or if that's just an expectation, because like I'm later, like they can't wake up at like, if I want a meeting at noon, they have to wake up at 4 a.m. But if they want a meeting at noon, then 7 p.m., 8 p.m. isn't really a particularly bad time to have a meeting for me. So it's a weird one. That's definitely been noticeable, especially now I'm like meeting with a lot of people in Japan over LinkedIn. Like the meeting times for them are always, it's always like 6 p.m. on a Friday or something. And I would feel bad that they seem to, they put it in their like calendar notes and stuff where it's like, these are the times I'm available, and it goes until like 8 p.m. And I'm like, well, I don't want to take those late ones because I know that you're going to stay and wait for them. But in England, you never see like, it's like 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. and that's all I'm willing to do for meetings.
Yeah, I agree. I noticed that, what you're saying there, because they're more flexible in terms of using the evenings, where in the work culture in the UK, where it's like after 5 p.m. it's like, I'm not available at all. But they can be more flexible for that. So that's something, they're more flexible with the timing. So that's that. And so just going to do a follow-up question on that. So if you were to give advice on other freelance people or front-end developers, agency owners who are dealing with international clients, what advice would you give them in terms of like anything to do with communication, how to be more efficient in doing business with them? This can be any examples of communication, even knowing the language, that's like one of them. Anything that you like.
It's an interest. I mean, when I think, it totally depends like which direction you're coming from as well. Like, are you a Japanese business trying to get work in England, or are you an English one trying to get work in Taiwan? Because the big start is just like salary. Well, like the cost of things is so slightly different that my offer of £600 a day in England is kind of reasonable. But I think if I said that to someone in Taiwan, they might think I'm crazy. Like they would be like, we could, if you worked for us for like 3 weeks, we could just hire a dev for the whole year. So I think having some, there's a lot of talk in like startup-y worlds where it's like, know your worth and push for it.
Yeah.
But I think you have to make some concessions. And if you're targeting another area in particular, like Singapore or something, if you're going like, I want to be
Yeah.
there, or I want to work with people in Singapore, or have an excuse to travel to Singapore, then you have to be ready to not be what they're looking for. And if you're not, be ready to sort of course correct towards what they want, even if that's not necessarily who you are or what you want, right? You just have to, that's like, that's adapting, right? Like if you're confident you know the British market, but you value the Singaporean market, you're going to have to learn the Singaporean market. You might get some clients by never learning that, but I have a hunch you would get a lot more if you embraced it rather than resisted it and sort of went really like hard sales and hard business on a culture that doesn't accept that.
Yeah, so I agree on that. The price of your day rate, salary is all different. In Japan, for example, in UK, of course, you can't go with the UK expectation because I believe like maybe Tokyo max salary is probably like, I mean, I don't know the numbers exactly, but 40, 50K equivalent, maybe. That's like a 100K salary in London, for example, just trying to think about.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, even like the visa benefits in Japan cap out at £50,000 a year, which is not a particularly high salary for like London-based or software developer, right? But to them, that's like the peak of what we would give you a benefit for. So you've got to adjust it down a bit and just, the way I see it is like the pay is less, but it's not that much less. And then I think, you've got to think about this. If you're going like, I value Japan so much, I'm going to try and get clients there. You're not going to get everything. You're not going to get all the money, 100 clients, everything. You're gonna have to concede on something. And if that money's not worth it, then you don't do it. You don't have to work with Japan if you don't want to. And there's other advantages to it beyond the money, obviously. But in terms of like starting business, you've just got to be aware that you might be getting 50% less than you would. But maybe you can work from somewhere like Taiwan, where the cost of living is cheaper as well, and you take that flexibility, you give that flexibility.
Yeah. So thanks for that, Joseph. Yeah, some cool stuff that we spoke about. So just want to now talk about more about your what you do in your free time and stuff. So let's talk about like your any personal interests, hobbies. So please feel free to share. I mean, what you like doing.
Yeah. It's going to be totally unsurprising. I learned Japanese.
Yeah. Okay.
I think every day for the last almost 6 years. I'm studying kanji, drilling flashcards. I can't get enough of it. I don't know. I've always wondered if it's connected to the programming. Like programming is all about learning languages, applying those languages.
Yeah.
And so, they even share the word language. But I always found it weird because as a kid, I thought like programming languages, cool. Languages that people speak, why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
Now I've completely flipped around. I wish I could program less. If I could trade it, be worse at programming and better at speaking other languages, I would totally do it because I admire it now. I really admire the way that it gets you, even a little bit of language in Japan or in Taiwan gets you so far. In the same way that I think if you came to England and spoke broken English, I don't think you would get much sympathy from anyone. But I get the sense that in Taiwan, if I can order food at a restaurant, I get a lot of compliments. I get a lot of just nice smiles. And I just don't think you get that the other way. So yeah, that's totally, when I'm not programming, I am just watching some Japanese content just to learn from, or doing these flashcards. It's kind of just become almost like a meditative break, basically. And it just seems through that, everything aligns. And I think it's really important to do stuff that's you have to keep doing stuff that's difficult. So if you reach a point where front-end development becomes too easy, but then in your day life, you can't even order food in a restaurant, and your response to that is well, I'll never learn how to order food in a restaurant because I'll just use Google Translate or whatever. You've really missed an opportunity because that will bubble out to a friend for life somewhere, right? Someone you talk to that couldn't talk to you. They will still be there in 10 years, and that restaurant menu Google translated isn't going to come back in some weird way. And then, we're talking about business networking and stuff. sure my Japanese is like kid level now. I've hopefully got JLPT N4 next week, hopefully passed, which is the equivalent of like being an 8-year-old. But I have friends that have kids in Japan, and their kids are like 7 years old, 8 years old. So sure, maybe I can't have like a very professional relationship with my boss in Japan, but I can like get chased around a park on a bicycle by someone like shouting commands at me in Japanese, and I can understand it, and we can have fun. And you know, we're both learning a little bit of English, a little bit of Japanese from those experiences, and I just think that's like those are the best parts of life for me, when something that definitely wasn't possible a year ago you can do just through sheer will and sheer effort. So yeah, I just admire language learning in any way. I think it's incredible when anyone's bilingual or trilingual. I think in England we just ignore that and we really take it for granted, and we go like, well, of course you must learn English because you're here. But other countries don't really treat it like that. They seem to offer a bit more respect when you try. And I've always admired that from every angle, really.
So thanks for that. Language learning is it does open doors, and what it does, it just builds relationships, and that's what it is. And congratulations for the N5, and you're getting this N4 soon as well. So
I'm getting there.
So 僕も日本語は頑張るです。so I'm like I studied by myself. I actually haven't done any JLPT like you, but I can read like N3 level, so I just assume I'm that. But at some point I'll probably get on the JLPT as well, just to have it. It'll be something good to have. And so thanks for letting us know about your personal interests, that you like Japanese, and if there's anything else you'd like to share about anything you like doing, it can be anything.
Hey, I like Mandarin as well, but
okay.
Get much
okay.
It is just, wherever I can use it, I'm really happy. So when I was in Taiwan, it was the same.
Oh, okay. Like, that's great. Wow, Mandarin.
How do I bridge this? And luckily, Mandarin uses the same characters as Japanese. So they felt so connected in really nice ways, and I could, as soon as I got there, I could read the menus and stuff. It made me feel really weird because I'd never studied Mandarin before, but that was great.
Okay, Mandarin. Well, that's it's basically kanji. They call it in Mandarin. They call it Hanzi. The characters all the same. Like you can understand pretty much there. Okay, so thanks for that. And now what we're just gonna move on to is just basically, your kind of like daily life stuff. Like if there's any things that you follow, any rules you follow, any tools that you use in your everyday life. These tools can be digital tools that help you stay productive, anything like that. So we're just going to talk about any routine, any life hacks, anything that you'd like to share. This is all open. So
I'm really big on like to-do lists, stuff like Notion or Trello. Obviously, like Google Calendar, like getting stuff like that out of your head instead of trying to remember like all the things you're supposed to do in a day. I think I felt like I saw such a huge uptick, and it's exactly the same when I go into these businesses. First thing I do is get them on Trello and get them to start like breaking things down and writing things down, so that we actually have like a history. I just think it's like when I started doing that for my own life, everything really clicked into place. It makes me feel good to like tick boxes throughout the day. And instead of, I feel like I never forget stuff now. Like everything just goes straight into a to-do list. And that's why I recommend Notion and Trello in particular, just because adding a new ticket is so lazy. Whereas if you had something like Jira, there's all these forms and all these boxes to fill in, but something where it's just like a text box, basically like a notes app that has like check boxes is all totally good for stuff like that. So that's all I do. I'm not a big routines guy because all the work is so flexible. Like if I try and sit down and go like, I'm doing 2 hours on this client, 2 hours on this client, I find that just hurts it. Like I think I'd rather I sort of follow what feels fun and interesting, and then if any of them try to like grab my attention, I let them and I like follow that. But it feels quite natural to me. And then I guess just in general, I think something I used to say was like, I feel like really lucky. Like I keep finding these clients and it's lucky. And one of my old bosses said, like, you make your own luck. And that felt like a good way to just like pivot the thinking from like, I could have nothing if I wasn't lucky. But instead, I actually have like, I have these 10 clients because I was in the right rooms, because I put myself out there to be in the right rooms. Not that I was lucky those rooms were the right ones to be in, but because I constantly put myself in like 100 places and 10 of them worked out. So it's sort of, don't dismiss like wherever you are in life now, you got there because you chose to do things. And some of those things might have been forced upon you, or you didn't really want to do them the way they turned out, or it might not be as good as you thought it was going to be. But I think just, admitting that you had a part to play in every like lucky thing that happened to you is a really nice positive spin on something that I think is true. Like you do it even if it wasn't 100% in your control. You made it happen by choosing to study Japanese or go on a particular holiday or do whatever it is.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we make our own luck, and that's what it is. I mean, sometimes luck, when we get luck, it's great. But if you don't, we have to go make it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Can't wait for the luck. So if you whatever you need to do, you can do it. I mean, yeah, that's some great stuff. So now what we're gonna do is just gonna go into like we're pretty much gonna go to our final part where we're gonna just ask any. We're just gonna you mentioned about any like feedback that you would have for anyone who wants to do what you're doing. So yeah, based on that, if you've got any advice you would give to someone who wants to get on the front end development, marketing right now, front end development in terms of like marketing themselves and so on, any advice would be appreciated.
Yeah, I guess we already kind of touched on it, but it's like it's a tough time. Like you can't go into software engineering now or marketing and think that it's going to be easy, or think that like getting the degree will mean you will get the job. I think every career at the moment is having like a bit of a squeeze in that you have to sort of overextend yourself for a few years to get established. And then once you're established, things get a lot easier. So I would say like, don't be disheartened in that early time, and try to do stuff that's real, right? Like if you have a computer science degree, 1,000 other applicants have a computer science degree. But if you have a computer science degree and a website, like a personal portfolio, only 50 of them are going to have a personal portfolio. If you have an interesting project on there, only 10 of them are going to have an interesting project. So, these things aren't easy to do. You have to overextend a little bit. You have to be a bit creative. But I think in the early stages, the more real proof you can have for your skills, the better it's going to be. And especially as we get into this LLM stage, generating a website with an LLM is still a really cool thing to do, especially if you can deploy it, if you have like a custom domain name. Like there are skills outside the automated AI element of them that have a lot of value. If you're doing marketing, sure, you can generate some assets, you can generate some marketing speak with it. But if you come back and you post every day for 2 years nonstop, that consistency has way more value than the AI tool, because I can use the AI tool, but I might not be able to post every day for 2 years, or I might not be able to have the right eye for design. And I would hope that for now, the AI maybe doesn't have the same eye for design that hopefully you have, or any other creative person that you know. So yeah, it's just do real things, have like real proof, and hopefully, keep at it, and the consistency should pay off in some weird way.
Great. That's really nice to hear that, and really want to say thank you for everything, and just want to final thing we just want to ask, like how can our listeners contact you? So you can mention your website. I mean, we will have Joseph Allen's details below, but this is just again if you would like to share anything.
I'll give you LinkedIn is the main place. That's the best place to contact me at the moment. I'll send my two portfolio websites just to give. It's really been a theme. Like I do bounce between like two really different, disparate things. But I have two portfolio sites. I have one that's like super corporate, super boring. There's no like witty, sarcastic copy on there. It's all like, it's almost like a CV. And then I have another one that's Rugrats themed. So at the top, it's got like like a old, what's the old like scan lines on television and stuff. It's kind of like I tried to make like a Nickelodeon website for myself. And I'll send both of those, and then in the underneath the podcast, you can have a look and you can see which one do you like more, the corporate one that could be AI generated, or the one that I made myself that's like really ugly, plays audio out loud, like it's a proper like 2000s website. And I just think basically this week I potentially got a client because of that weird website, because they were complaining about the boring corporate websites basically that they were receiving. So it's something I did because I think it makes you stand out more and it was fun, but it is still converting into like real money and real clients. So I think there's you can pick and choose whether you want the sort of AI content corporate website or the really fun one. Maybe just in the comments, say which one's your favorite. I have a feeling I know already.
Well, yeah, so thanks for that. We'll do that, Joseph. So really appreciate your time, and just want to say to the viewers, and thanks a lot for watching this episode. And I'm your host, Majid Hashmi, and we'll see each other in the next episode. All right, so take care, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We hope you liked it. Please leave a review, subscribe, or share it to anyone you like. If you're a global founder, or is a professional, or a founder that is interested in doing global business, we would love to hear your story. If you would like to be featured on Bridging Talks, please email me at podcast@bridgingconnect.com, or you can visit our website bridgingconnect.com/podcast. I am your host, Majid Hashmi, and I will see you soon. Take care.